Has someone got a TV on in the background?
No. What?
Can hear it a little bit.
Taxes are the only certainty. Well, 20% of people of society. Yes, I have made it on my own in this world. Well, nothing to get a turn around a 2-year-old. I'm gonna stop the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna stop the old nation with myself with reservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with myself with reservation. Well, let me talk a bit about the weather. You must admit it's not very clever. Don't get me wrong, it's not an anti-British song. Well, there is nowhere I would rather be wrong. I'm gonna stop the old nation and do my own thing, and I will be king. I'm gonna stop the old nation with myself and reservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with myself and reservation. There are just a few things that I would like to say about the UK and how I think it has gone astray. Don't get me wrong, it ain't all bad. I love the crazy fads, like England always buggering up, but you know we're gonna win the World Cup. I'm gonna stop the old nation with myself and reservation. I'm gonna stop the old nation with myself and reservation.
Keep the red flag flying here.
And welcome, Justicios. It's so lovely to see you all yet again on a Tuesday night. I keep meaning to ask Paul the number before we come on air. What number is it this week? 118, and I just forget every time, and I have to ask you in front of all of you, and my total ignorance becomes clear. We have got for you tonight, first of all, 3 totally topical topics, because we have the International Workers' Day, and we've got the Coronation Day, and then Jane, what is it? Something Journalism Day, World Journalism.
Press Freedom Day.
Press Freedom Day coming up. Is that Saturday?
That's tomorrow.
Tomorrow, and so we're going to talk about all 3 things. But much more important than the topics, I have got 3 wonderful people, true socialists, who are going to give you the socialist gen on three totally topical topics. And so they are Paul Daly.
Oh, hello.
Do you know that Paul does 100 miles cycling just for fun? And the amazing Jane Strange. Yay! Everybody's clapping at home, Jane. And Kerry, it's so good to see you. Welcome to the show. Hello.
Thanks for having me again.
No, it's our privilege. Thank you. And I think what we'll do, hang on, what have we got? Oh, everybody's just saying hello, hi, hello. Feels like, yes, Neil, it just feels like Monday today. Hi, Jacqueline Hemmings, lovely to see you. Lovely to see Kerry again, says Leanne. Jacqueline Hemmings missed Cow Daily yesterday because he felt like Sunday. Yes, I think that yesterday felt like Sunday, much more than today felt like Monday. Anyway, Kerry is awesome.
Oh, who's saying that?
Neil Terry.
Oh, I think now
Neil-
Neil's got a bit of a soft spot for me.
Well, Neil has had a real triumph recently because he's been on the front page and the back page of the same edition of the Morning Star with his photograph.
Brilliant. Well done.
Congratulations, Neil. Well done. We all share with you. Okay, let's go straight to business. Jane, moment of the week.
So my moment of the week was Open Democracy winning their 2-year battle with Matt Hancock, forcing him to publish his official ministerial diaries from the beginning of the pandemic. So he's been fighting their freedom of information requests for 2 years now, since March 2020, so more than 2 years, and he's lost and he has to publish them. And so in the meantime, he's been able to write his own version of events during the pandemic. But now we will find out who he was really talking to during that early period and what he was really doing with his time. And I think it'd be quite enlightening. And I'm really happy for Open Democracy because they've worked really hard for this.
Yes, absolutely. And maybe refer to that again when we're doing our freedom of the press parts. Paul Bubbles, moment of your week.
There's a bit of a theme going on here. So I got a response today to a subject access request that I did, and it was it was from the 25th of October last year. I did a subject access request for everything the Labour Party held on me. And
Wow.
and I gave them a time frame of 2014 to present, and then I reminded them a month after that they had to respond within a month, and they didn't. And then today, just out of the blue, thank you for your email. Oh, hang on. I'll read you the one. Dear Paul, thank you for your DSAR request last year, and apologies for our delay in responding. We've now conducted initial searches with respect to your DSAR, which has resulted in a very considerable number of search results being returned. Furthermore, as you may be aware, the party was notified in October 2021 that a third party that handles data on our behalf has been subject to a cyber incident. This has caused ongoing disruption to the party's usual processes and resulted in a significant volume of DSARs being received, which has added a further dimension of complexity in dealing with DSARs in general. In light of this, we would be grateful if you could narrow the scope of your request in any way. For example, by limiting the request to more limited date range or agreeing to exclude correspondence that you've either sent, received, or has been copied into, and to exclude any publicly available information. As the volume of information retrieved following our initial searches is simply too large for our small staff team to review and appropriately prepare a disclosure, we'd urge you to engage with us on the scope of your request in order that we have a reasonable opportunity to be able to comply with your DSAR. You are, of course, entitled to contact the Information Commissioner's offices regarding this matter should you wish, though you should be aware that the party engages frequently with the ICO, who are fully appraised of the current challenges faced by the party in responding to DSARs. I look forward to your response regarding the scope of this DSAR. Yours sincerely, Data Protection Team, the Labour Party.
What a complete and utter load of tosh.
I just like the
I'm a
fact
bit-
that they've got so much on me.
I'm a bit worried
Mine got
about them
denied.
saying that before they can release it, they have to review it. What's going on there? You don't want a reviewed.
No?
You just want to know.
Surely it takes more time to filter through and check what type of correspondence it is. Surely it's quicker to just give you everything.
Yeah.
Then there could be libel, couldn't there, if they give Paul everything?
Well, but that's the whole point of requesting what they've got on you.
That's why they want to go through it.
Anyway,
Good though, isn't it? I'm quite excited about what they've got.
Good for you,
They've
Paul.
clearly
That's
got
so
they've clearly got a
nice.
lot on me. So and obviously they had the dossier that they were building up over time, and I'm kind of like wondering what they threw away and what they were trying to do behind the scenes. And if they actually do give me all that detail of the kind of murky stuff they were trying to do, it's going to be fun, isn't it? I'm quite looking forward to seeing what they have on me. So yeah. Get them whacked in, everyone. See what happens.
what's it called, Paul, when they put black lines through everything?
Redacted.
Redacted.
But there's an iPhone app, you can just remove the redacted black lines.
Oh,
I'm getting some very short.
But yeah, it's that.
Kelly, I'm getting some really weird feedback from you. There's something happening in the background there, or there's a loop going on or something.
oh, we were invaded
better?
by visitors.
Right, it's the Labour Party. Gathering.
They're not that clued up.
Finally, Kerry, moment of your week.
Well, it's a bit of an all right moment, but also a bit of a downer moment, you know me. I went to Leeds last week as the only Unite community member there in a room full of 100 people. And it was to meet our General Secretary, Sharon, well, I won't say her name, we all know her name. And it was, to me, it was just, I had to sneak my way in, to be fair. I had to put my foot down to get there. Otherwise, no other community member would be there. And I can say it because I can get away with saying it. Talk about a big ego boost. And it was like, even like the presentation she done, I can say it on here. Well, I can anyway. I pinched it. We shouldn't have took it, but I pinched mine. Sorry, I shouldn't say that again, but it was literally like you read through it, I done this and I done that and I done this and I done that. And to me, I think a general secretary is to represent the membership of their trade union, to represent them. And it's like, I think our general secretary is currently on the biggest ego trip of her life, and it's quite disheartening. But yeah, but apart from that, I'm all swings and roundabouts and happy.
Good. We're pleased to hear it. And we'll deal with the disclosure information that we'll be getting from Unite the Union in due course of time, I'm quite sure. Okay, let's move.
Yeah.
Now it's time for the big story.
And the big story today is International Workers' Day. And I'm going to start by going to Paul. And I'm basically going to say, is the idea of an International Workers' Day something from the 20th century that we really need to abolish?
Well, that's exactly what they want you to think, isn't it? That's exactly what the establishment want you to think, that it's some sort of archaic thing. Let's forget about all the things that the collaborative power of workers has brought us, like the weekend, like health and safety at work. Oh, it's health and safety gone mad. I preferred it when you used to run the risk of death or losing a limb at work and things like that, you know. Did I tell you before about when I spoke to some Swedish friends of mine, Christine Linderoth, who's been interviewed? They couldn't believe that saying, health and safety gone mad. They just thought it was the funniest thing that they'd ever heard. But anyway, because they think health and safety is a good thing in Sweden.
Yes.
So So people might think the people do want us, the establishment do want us to think that this is like an old-fashioned thing. It's a bit of a communist thing. It's a bit of a Russian thing because it's like Mayday and everything like that. But no, it's an incredibly relevant thing, more and more relevant actually at the moment. Perhaps the balance between workers and bosses was a little bit more fair in the past, but we've gone way beyond any gains that we won. And I think it's more important than ever now that we come together as collectives, as workers, as people who work in a place and think, right, what kind of power can we exert on our bosses? Because at the end of the day, the people who work are the people who generate the value. They generate the profits for the companies. They generate all sorts of things, well, like the real things, the real tangible things. I suppose you can just make up money and do all that kind of nonsense with money. But with regards to actually producing things and actually improving people's lives, it's the workers who do it. So it's never been more relevant to celebrate what workers do. I'm not actually one of these people who thinks that we could have a UBI where everyone could choose not to work. I think we're so far from that. There is so much to do. There's so much work that needs to be done. If you look around your town, village, whatever, things aren't fixed. You know, like energy isn't being produced at a really good rate. Everything isn't nice and tidy. We could produce a lot of our goods closer to home. There is a lot of work that could be done. So I think we need to be thinking about what kind of work is important, what kind of resources that we want to gain from work, and what kind of what can human resources do, and really respect the power and strength of workers and what people produce.
I mean, across the world, International Workers' Day was greeted in many different ways, most notably in very violently in France. I mean, do you think that it's just in England that we seem to have lost the momentum of International Workers' Day, that we seem to have, certainly many of the population seem to have lost its meaning?
Yeah, we've not just it. I think it's anywhere where the Murdoch press is really prevalent. If you look at what happens in the world, like the Murdoch press is very prevalent in the USA. It's very prevalent in the UK. I think the damage that someone like Rupert Murdoch has done to the Western world is immeasurable, and I think that's underestimated. Actually, the press in our countries that where they don't respect workers' rights is appalling. The way that they treat workers is appalling, and maybe I don't think I don't want to do British people down. I don't want to do people who happen to live on these islands down. Um, but there is a subservience absolutely built into our culture, into our class system. We are going to be talking about that level of subservience later when we talk about the coronation.
Yep.
That is all styled, like the whole thing is planned in order to keep us down, keep us in our place, but then have some sort of weird pretense that we're all equal somehow. But even though we are told that we're not equal, and then we have this like dog eat dog world where we scrap around at the bottom for the scraps from the table of the rich. It is absolutely horrific. But yeah, as I say, the Murdoch press and the likes of it, like the Daily Mail. But for those of you who don't know, the Murdoch press would be the Times, the Sun, a couple of other news publications. Wherever in the USA, Fox News, and a lot of their newspapers as well. Australia have the same problems, and you don't see these problems in other countries. It tends to be it's well worth researching like how bad it is in Murdoch, where Murdoch press dominates. This anti-worker rhetoric dominates.
Jane, a very bleak picture from Paul there. I mean, what do you think are the dangers facing working people at the moment that we ought to be getting more upset about?
So I think the gig economy is a huge threat to many workers, to us all really. I was watching, I rewatched a BBC drama called Death in the Warehouse at the weekend. So it's a really good documentary. It's a really good drama showing people what these kind of places do to people on both sides. So the workers on the bottom rung and people coming in at a slightly higher level, and how they dehumanize people. But a lot of the hard-won rights that have been gained through trade unions and workers making huge sacrifices over decades and decades, like a living wage, secure employment, the right to a pension, all these things are going by the wayside for so many people. A 5-day working week, this is not the reality for a lot of people now in this country. They're not being given those rights. And it's I think it's standard really now for younger people or for older people looking for a job, going into insecure employment on 0 hours contracts with tiny pension offerings, wages that won't necessarily pay enough for them to live on. And I was reading in a big issue article yesterday that £700 was cut in real terms from the salary of workers, normal workers last year. Each worker lost about £700 in their spending power, while CEO salaries rose. And this is a pattern that's been going on for decades now, that the wages at the very, very top have gone up and up and up. And there's been more and more cuts to workers' wages whilst profits grow at the same time. And
Dividends have trebled in the last decade.
it's really scary. It's going in a really bad direction.
I mean, there was a lovely article came out from the TUC which talked about the curtailments of workers' rights. There's a continual downward trend in workers' rights as well, isn't there?
It's been happening for a long time now. I think certainly since the time when I left school, I've seen a constant deterioration in the job market, in what's on offer for people. So I think being the age that I am, when I first came into the job market, I saw standards that aren't there now in so many respects. And I grew up in a world that looked very different to what we have now. And I never imagined that things now would be as they are. You grow up and you hear about good things that have happened and justices that have happened and things that have been achieved, and you think you're on an upward trajectory, that the world's getting better and better. And it's been very strange to see that actually that hasn't happened over the last 30 years, 40 years. Things have got worse and worse gradually, I feel.
Yes, it's sort of an alarming downward trend. And certainly very different. And I was reading, I mean, surveillance in the workplace is becoming more common. Bullying in the workplace is becoming more common. The TUC is going mad on a regular basis with racism in the workplace and discrimination in the workplace, homosexual discrimination in the workplace. And you just think, yes, you're right. It's sort of, you grew up thinking that the world was getting better and better. It's not. It's getting worse and worse, isn't it?
It's really sad. And this is one of the things that was brought up in Death in the Warehouse, statistics that you've seen in the news about the number of ambulances being called to the warehouses of these big entities. And I know people who've worked in these places. I had someone that I care about worked in one of these horrific places, and someone had a heart attack whilst they were there and had to be taken off. And when he returned to work shortly afterwards, he started to feel those pains again and thought he was going to have another heart attack, and they wouldn't let him call an ambulance. It's really inhuman the way these places are and the way workers are treated as if they're completely disposable. It's completely inhumane. And I think there needs to be more understanding, because when you're working in a white collar job, I don't think there's a proper understanding of that. I went to university and was lucky enough to get a university education and have, certain qualifications that have meant that the experience I've had applying for jobs is completely different to the experience of people I'm close to who didn't have that benefit, who maybe left school when they were 16, who are very intelligent, capable people, every bit as capable as me. I'll apply for a job in the past, and there's a handful of candidates and I've got a good chance of getting it. And it was a real eye-opener to see that is not what it's like if you come from a different educational background, or if you've just not had those opportunities. It's it's soul destroying to see, you're applying for jobs where there's hundreds of other candidates, you're just a number on a piece of paper, no one cares, you don't really stand a chance, and the jobs that you do get, you're treated absolutely appallingly in. And I think if I didn't have the personal experience of knowing people in that situation, I would assume
Wouldn't
they had the same
understand. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry.
experience as me. Yeah, but it's not like that.
Caused you I've caused you to freeze, Jane, by agreeing too violently with you. Yes, absolutely. And I think so many people who complain about woke culture and their experience stops. Kerry, have you had a cigarette then?
Yeah, can you just see me sneaking out the screen?
Yes,
like,
yes. And have you had something to eat?
Oh, can you see me doing that as I was picking
Yes,
the
we can see you. We can see you.
Sorry. Sorry.
It's okay. Yeah,
now all day, only going half an hour ago. About this.
Sort of, Paul, very depressed about the deadening effect of the Fox media in this country on basically the idea of International Workers' Day and workers' rights in general, and workers' feelings that they need to do something about it. Jane, very down about the things that are going wrong for workers in the workplace. Is there anything good happening that you can tell us about that we can sort of say, well, there's something to build on? Kerry, you're muted.
No, I was just making you aware I can that this week, what day is it? We're all confused with the bank holidays, aren't we? And I'm confused with the teachers' strikes. But last week, Amazon's getting unionised, isn't it? Well, it's pushing for unionisation by the GMB. So that's a really good thing. That's all I want to say, sorry.
That's amazing.
Is that the only bright spot you can give us, Kerry? Is that the only bit of hope in the future? There must be something more, surely.
Well, I just think that you have to look why the Rupert Murdoch, I can't even say his name because he's that much of a moron. You only have to look at why they absolutely hate workers, because currently how many strikes are going on in this country by trade unions and stuff, and a lot of them are winning, really winning. And obviously Unite obviously rejected the NHS pay offer, but they've got other pay offers and they've won X amount of money. And I think that the right-wing media are running scared of the trade unions at the moment because they're actually doing more than the Labour Party are doing in any way, shape or form. And I think that people are willing to go on strike. People are joining trade unions and they are going out on strike. And I think, especially when it comes to the teachers, I've seen a total shift in positiveness, towards them being on strike. Even our NHS staff, I've seen a shift. No one's saying, "Oh, they're not slagging them off anymore." They're realising why they're going on strike, and I think that that's a good thing. And obviously, the right wing media will hate that one.
Yes. But I mean, I've been amazed how much support for the strikers has held up.
Yeah, definitely. Especially for our teachers in our school, anyway, from where we are. The strikes.
Oh, no, I know what you're going to do now. You're going to talk about this teacher that you got a crush on. I'm going to put my foot down right now. Okay, that's it. What was it? I'm not going to ask you his name.
John.
Just go on one. It's outed on social media, Kerry. I'm not going to talk about him at all.
I'm old enough to be my daughter's teacher's mum. Never mind anything like that, John. I will.
Very tall before. We heard you last time you were on talking about it. Paul, what should we be doing as educated individuals, people listening to this show? What should we be doing about the dire situation facing workers today? How can we help?
I think we need to throw off the shackles of Thatcherism, and by that what I mean is we need to show one another solidarity. So, the Thatcherite mentality was that, we can all go around and be individuals, dog eat dog, you deserve what you get. If you're really greedy, that's good. And it's not the way human beings are built. It's not what we want. It doesn't make people happy. What does make people happy is feeling like they're part of something, and showing one another solidarity. And I don't mean saying it, because that's another thing that is, it's really pissing me off, to be honest. People saying things like solidarity, and they don't mean it. They need to show solidarity. Solidarity is not something you say, it's something you show. Now, I'll give you an example here, and this is like me being an absolute idiot. So today I've been on strike, right? My union wasn't on strike, so I joined the union so I could go on strike, and that's a form of solidarity. And that could get me into trouble. Like my workplace, I'm very, very lucky that my boss is a very decent human being and supports workers' rights, really does. But that's not always been the case for me. But I've been willing to do that. Like, so when people have been losing their jobs in the past in my workplace, I've been willing to put my job at risk for them, or put my like livelihood at risk for them. And I don't know whether that makes me an idiot or whether I don't know what makes me. But if everyone was like that, we'd win. We'd win all the
If
time.
everyone was like you, Paul, the world would be a lot better place.
I don't know. I don't. You know,
mean,
maybe if everyone was a bit like, I think we do need individual
We all have to
differences. Like I do
cycle
have many faults. Don't worry. But
I mean, it's sort of, but what do we do in a world which is quite clearly dominated? I was reading this article, which was sort of saying neoliberalism started after the Second World War, and it absolutely hates the idea of anything social, anything communal, anything the welfare state. These things. Because this idea of us all having obligations to each other are absolutely inimical to neoliberal ideas, which is all about sort of allowing the market just to run free with its selfishness. And I mean, the world is full of these people, full of people who could not give a shit. And how do we? I mean, I'm going to quote some people. Jacqueline Hemmings, isn't it marvellous when we have to protest, strike, or demonstrate to get the minimum standards of decent treatment? And so the bitterness in that sentence, Jacqueline, is absolutely fantastic. Go to the pickets, show our solidarity, build back our communities, and put resources into them again. Paul Terry agrees with me that you're a good person. As Neil Terry agrees with me that you're a good person. So what do we do, Paul, when we're nice people in a world full of horrible people?
You got to stick together. The problem is, again, we are very divisive, and we're very easily divided over issues, over like nuanced issues, because we do think about things. And I think a lot of the time people on the left forget that they're all on the same team. So you might be like, so if I have a disagreement with a friend, it doesn't mean I don't like them. It doesn't mean I don't agree with them 90% of the time, 99% of the time, 60% of the time, whatever it is. It doesn't mean I don't agree with them more often than I don't. And that happens a lot. And I think we need to be very careful about making sure that we've got this very, very strange binary society, particularly since the advent of social media. So, like, I'll take Gary Lineker, for example. Right? Gary Lineker did a good thing, takes in refugees, said some really good things about the Tory government being awful to refugees. Great. Doesn't mean that I agree with him on the rest of the whole politics thing, but it seemed like everyone was like, Gary Lineker now, Gary Lineker's the hero. Now everyone listen to St. Gary. And it's like, well, no, his politics are shit, basically. John Barnes said that in his, he's like, he said he was thick. He says, sorry, John Barnes for spoiling, but he did say it publicly. But, and you don't have to agree with everything Gary Lineker says in order to think he was right on that issue. And the same goes the other way. If someone that you largely agree with says something that you disagree with, don't throw them away. Don't throw them away. You might want to say, do you know what? I didn't like what you said there. I know you're a good person and I know you wouldn't have wanted to do that, but I'm still on your team. I'm still on your side. But the left is just such bicker and factions, and they'll do things and they'll go all over the place, and they won't support one another because of small differences. And sometimes it's difference in approach. Well, I think we should approach it this way. Do you know what? Research has found? A bad plan executed well will always beat a good plan executed badly. And I think that's what's happening all the time. The left have a good plan of how to run society, but we execute it very, very badly because we argue over the details and we don't all do the same thing. If we just did something simple and all did the same simple thing, you start to win. But there's too many people who want to be the leader. There's too many people who, they don't want to do it for other people. They want to do it for adulation, or they think that they're the only person to do it. The whole point of socialism is to say, what you said about me earlier on, John, absolutely lovely, and what Neil said about me, absolutely lovely. I'm just one person. I'm not irreplaceable. I'm one in a vast number of people who are absolutely wonderful, who could do amazing things, and you've got to accept that as a human being, that there are other people with marvellous ideas, and most of the time they agree entirely with you. That's the mentality we need to take into things, and I think we probably need to work on ourselves a little bit and get that mentality pushing through the left.
I think that as soon as you say we need to work on yourselves, I immediately take it personally. You're damn right. So one of the things that people are saying, Mia, this is so good. The irony is Thatcherism says we're all individuals, but they don't like it when people try to be their own person. They don't like people who's a bit different. Sort of, they only like individualism. They only like individuals when it isolates us from each other and absolves them from thinking about others. My golly, I think that's the cleverest. I'm sorry, team. I think that's the cleverest statement of the night so far. Mark Lungley also, socialists can be as ideologically pure as evangelical Christians, and it causes both to come unstuck. That's a good thing as well. My golly, some smashing comments. Thank you, Justicios. We are sort of indebted to you. I'm going to move on to the other story now. Okay, Jane. Press Freedom Day tomorrow, you say, but the press is in utter disrepute and disarray, isn't it? Just talk us through some of the problems facing the press at the moment.
So we are under the impression that we live in a democracy, and maybe we do, maybe we don't. I get confused about this, but when we look at our media and what comes out of our media, it is dominated by a very, very small number of very, very rich people to an alarming extent. And that really comes across in the media, in the mainstream media reporting that we see. So in the last week, Richard Sharp has resigned as chairman of the BBC. And so this man had helped to arrange a loan of nearly £1 million for our Prime Minister, a loan that we still don't know who that was provided by. We don't know who funded our Prime Minister to the tune of £1 million that Richard Sharp helped arrange. And the problem is that the Prime Minister appointed Richard Sharp, a man who'd also made £400,000 or more in donations to the Tories and funded groups who have been viewed to be undermining the BBC. I personally think it's very inappropriate that the government appoints a chairman or any senior person at the BBC, but that's what's going to happen. Rishi Sunak's now going to appoint the new chairman of the BBC. And when you look at what the BBC has been doing in recent times, when you look at the terrible Panorama anti-Semitism programme that came out just before the 2019 election, which almost undoubtedly affected the election and put in government a corrupt far-right government, I would say, and told outright lies, as it's been proven, about the opposition. When you think about the Richard Attenborough climate crisis documentary that recently was going to be shown only online rather than on TV, because I don't understand how the BBC could possibly justify hiding the truths of the devastation being brought upon the planet by the climate crisis and climate change. The Murdoch press, Paul's mentioned already, has had a huge impact on politics and society in the UK, the US, and Australia, where it's dominant. Julian Assange has been sitting in prison now for over 4 years for revealing human rights abuses committed by a Western government. Not one person involved in committing those human rights abuses has apologised or been held to account in any way. But this man is being slowly murdered, has had his life destroyed, and is still facing the possibility of being extradited to the US to face 175 years in prison under the custody of people who've been proven to have tried to murder him a few years ago. Daphne Caruana Galicia was murdered by a car bomb after publishing the Panama Papers not many years ago, giving details of some of the very richest people in the world and their dodgy dealings and where they're hiding their money. And we had the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, who was an American Palestinian reporter. She was reporting on human rights abuses committed against Palestinians, which she had done throughout her career. She was murdered by Israeli snipers wearing a press vest after having let them know that her and her colleagues would be in the area doing that work. And then we've got government ministers in this country, even our sitting PM when it was Boris Johnson, writing newspaper columns and hosting news talk shows on TV, apparently telling people that they are the anti-establishment when they've been sitting on the front benches of the government for the last 13 years, driving an agenda which has impoverished people and put us in a situation where people are vulnerable and very vulnerable to believing that someone else is responsible for the terrible situation they find themselves in, the unforgivable situation that many people find themselves in. It is terrible, and these people are in a position to be, blaming refugees, asylum seekers, other people whose lives are, who are suffering. People in this country who've, not had an easy time of things, but are scapegoated as the reason for, the problems caused by austerity and government corruption.
Thank you. I mean, it's very bleak, isn't it? Just Jacqueline Hemmings, isn't freedom of the press meant to be about speaking truth about power or holding power to account rather than coming out with bigoted propaganda? I was reading a really interesting article about this, which says that Reagan, in post-war America, they had these rules about being impartial, about responsible journalism. And the Reagan administration just cancelled the need to do that altogether. And there was an immediate proliferation of right-wing extremist media, just because that's where all the money is, isn't it? Kerry, are you there? Can we gather you up?
Oh, of course, you're interrupted. They sent me an Indian and it's all wrong. So if I'm not multitasking, I am.
I've noticed that you sort of, what do we need to do about the media to put things right? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that they need to be muted quite a lot. Like, like Elon Musk's put like a thing like on Twitter, like about posting fake news. I think there needs to be something in this country, like an ombudsman about the media, to stop them posting like rubbish. And like, if that makes any sense, I know like the left-wing media like post fact, but the likes of like the trashy like news outlets just like they post anything, don't they? And I mean, you only have to go on like watch the BBC 6 o'clock news, then watch ITV at 6:30, and it's totally two different programs, but it's the same news. So it's just like what the way they're like swaying. I think that they're just totally putting hate towards the people who need the help the most. And it's always like Teesside Live, especially for me. They're like, you can tell if they're having a dry day of like media like coverage because they'll put something about universal credit on. So that gets their like views up, and then the hate towards UC claimants and stuff, or just certain things. I think it's sound bites, like the actual like headline. I think that needs to be more regulated, which it won't be with Rupert Murdoch and all them in charge, will it? But I
Do
think
you
that
think
they
there's a
need to be
problem is
regulated.
that, do you think one of the problems is that the people who give us the news are on these massive multi-thousand pounds, hundreds of thousands of pounds? They don't have a clue what it's like to be poor or...
No, they haven't got a clue, and people believe they're like propaganda and stuff. And if like Teesside Live, I'll just use it as an example from where I'm from, posted tomorrow some absolute tosh that you know it was complete and utter lies, you would get some people around here who would totally believe it. Like they believe quite a lot of stuff that, like, I'll use one big example which I'm going off about asylum seekers. They reckon that they get fully furnished houses, cars, they get everything given to them on a plate, and that really infuriates me because I know that's not fact. Where I think they need to be more regulated about the stuff that they share on their outlet in their outlets. Obviously, like the Teesside Live near me is the Reach group, and it's like the trash. It's like the mini version of the Sun and the Daily Mail. I've been in there as like when I've done stuff with Unite about UC, and like they've totally twisted the story when I've like spoke to them. So I won't speak to them anymore now. And I think that they need to be more regulated.
Paul, I know this is one of your things. Socialist Think Tank is part of a group that are trying to set a new standard for journalism and the reporting the news. So to talk to us about that.
Okay, so we're part of the Independent Media Association, which is it's not a politically affiliated group, but we are independent media with opinions on certain things. Now, one of the big problems that we've got is that we operate under the pretense that our media are unbiased. And it's not even possible. Like, why would you be interested in the topic if you weren't biased? Imagine like getting into politics and thinking, you know what, I'd love to be a political journalist because I don't have an opinion on politics at all. Like, you know, it's nonsense. We are admittedly biased towards a left-wing point of view, but what we won't do is lie to you. We won't make up facts. We will tell you what's fact and we'll tell you what's opinion. And that's how we're regulated by Impress, which I believe is a much higher standard than Ofcom, because, as I say, you are not allowed to tell lies. Now, the number of times I see in the media, in the mainstream media, people saying things as if it's true, as if it's fact. So, but when it's just their opinion, and they'll say things like, for example, they'll talk about Jeremy Corbyn being anti-Semitic. That's an opinion, and it's a wrong opinion. It's an incorrect opinion. I'll say that because there are no facts to back it up. There's nothing. They can never present any evidence of him actually doing or saying anything. The closest thing they've got is that someone at one time assumed that he must have anti-Semitic thoughts. I've really seen the press come out with that. Well, you know, he must have had anti-Semitic thoughts. Why must he have? Why? This is just silly. This is just absolute nonsense. And yet it's repeated time and again. And the BBC are having to put apologies out for saying complete lies about Jeremy Corbyn, left, right, and centre. And you know, it's become the truth. If you tell a lie often enough and enough people believe it, it becomes the truth. But it's not. It's factually incorrect. So we will always tell you what the difference is. So if I tell you something that's a fact, I'll tell you it's a fact. If I tell you something that's my opinion, you'll know it's my opinion. And I think that's something that is a much higher standard than we get anywhere else. People are biased, of course they are. Like Laura Koonsberg, for example, flagship programme of the BBC, member of the Conservative Party in her youth. You know, that you don't join the Conservative Party if you don't think the Conservative Party are good, you know, or can do something or whatever. So, yeah, and it's absolutely jam-packed full of these people. So, really, what we're trying to do is we're trying to develop independent media so that people without loads of money, without vested interests in money, and will be able to voice their opinion. It's very, very hard though, because you are battling the money.
Yeah. Thank you. And thank you for all you do on socialist media, on socialist think tank media. Brilliant. Last question. There's no music. Kerry, what are you going to do for the coronation? What do you think about the coronation?
Where shall I begin? We're an absolute, I won't swear, John, because you're here, absolute load of rubbish and an insult to the majority of the people in this country, in my opinion. I think it's a disgrace, and I mean an absolute disgrace. As I call him, Charlie Boy. And I just think it's a disgrace to like the people in this country, all the strikers, all the NHS workers, teachers, everything like that are all striking currently. People are massively suffering in this country, yet we're going to spend £100 million on a coronation to say Big Lugs is our king. Not my thing. Not my king and not my thing. I mean, I'm actually like torn, like they're having a coronation thing at our school on Friday, like a street party in the school, and I'm actually like torn. I was winding my daughter up saying, I'll make you some cakes and I'll put some icing on saying, not my king. But she went, Mum, you can't do that, they'll go mad. But I just feel as though, like, even in our like school system, that it's getting rammed down the throat and it's driving me mad. But everything's about the coronation and the king. I mean, he's not exactly pooing himself. Why can he not pay for it himself? If he's such like a nice person who's in touch apparently with reality, why can he not pay for his own coronation? I mean, you could go over the church over the road from me and get a crown put on your head for about £100. Why can he not do that? I think it's an absolute insult to everyone who's on strike and everyone who's currently struggling in this country, and it makes me ill. And the only thing I will be swearing on Saturday is I will be swearing not to watch that pile of tosh.
Thank you. Paul, what will you be doing on Coronation Day?
I'll be coaching cycling in the morning, and then I was gonna go for a bike ride in the afternoon because the roads will be quiet if people are as subservient as we're led to believe. So less chance of getting run over, and then people who run you over probably like the king anyway.
Will you be taking the oath of allegiance, Paul? Will you be taking the oath of allegiance to the king?
My allegiance is to people, not privilege. So no, I will not be taking any oath. Oaths are daft anyway, aren't they? I took one for my marriage, and that's the only one that I really take seriously. I can't imagine really taking any oaths that are meaningful. What are people doing? Like, it's been one of the best things to see people's reaction to that. Like, I'm not swearing an oath to them. Like, well, you kind of are being forced to. Like, you might not say the words, and MPs have to say the words, don't they? MPs have to swear an oath of allegiance to the king. And people think it's ridiculous, and people who I would say would normally support the royal family have found it infuriating, the idea that this man would ask them to be subservient to them. Like, that is literally the entire point of the royal family. Why are you still supporting the royal family when people are born into privilege over you? Like, you are saying, if you support the royal family, you are saying some people are born better than me. That's it. Some people are born better than my children. My children, who I love, they're not as good as the king. They're not as good as the king's family. They're not as good as Prince Andrew, the paedophile, allegedly. No? They are not as good as these upper class people, and yet they would hate that idea. That burns deep, doesn't it? The idea that someone is born better than your loved ones.
My kids have got much more about them than some royal family members.
Well, some royal family members will be really nice. They're people, but
some of them are complete and utter dicks or paedophiles. Are we?
Well, I think Prince Charles very Savile adjacent. He was certainly Savile adjacent, wasn't he? So
yeah, he's not exactly a genuine honest person, is he?
Jacqueline Hemming's on fire today. Expecting people to swear allegiance is state-enforced deference. Paul, one of the things that King Charles has suggested is that we can use our day off, our bank holiday, to volunteer for a good cause. Yeah, what's wrong with that? You mean you're going to volunteer down coaching, aren't you? What do you think about that for an idea?
It's my choice to do that, but like I also work full time, and I don't get given my life of privilege, and I'm not having a special day to celebrate putting on a hat. You know, like if I put on a hat, there's very rarely a parade. Um, but you know, it's I don't know. It's a bit cheeky and it's a bit yeah. It's good to volunteer, but also you can't force people to do stuff, or you can't even suggest that it's a good idea just because I don't know. It's it's nice to be nice, and to be honest, he's said a few things that are way nicer than a lot of our politicians are saying. And to be honest, he seems to have a lot more sensible ideas than a lot of the politicians that we have. But at the end of the day, he's been born into that position, and that's simply wrong. So don't tell me what to do. You know, if I want to volunteer, I'll go and volunteer, and I do. But if I don't want to, and I want to have a day off, that's entirely up to me. So yeah, that's how I feel.
Jane, what is the most vomit-inducing thing you have noticed happening for the coronation?
So the volunteering initiative was a strong contender because although I think volunteering is a very good thing, the utter out of touchness of it's just, well, we've spoken about it. It's just obscene. But I think this Charles is now the wealthiest real estate investor in the world. He's one of the wealthiest men in the world. He's going to be getting £330 million a year grant from the British people. He won't need to pay any tax on the vast earnings from his huge estates in this country unless he chooses to. He's going to be driven through the streets in a golden carriage. And when you scroll through what's going on in this country, 1 in 3 children are now living in poverty. There are record rents. And numbers of people on the streets living rough are rocketing. So that's obscene. And the other thing that really struck me was reading about the regalia and the jewels that are going to be involved in this, because I can't think about these. I can't look at them without thinking where they came from. Because what's happened is that years and years ago, centuries ago, rich British people went to other places, they plundered, they murdered, they enslaved the people, and they stole jewels from those countries, amongst other things. And now we're going to parade them around as if this is something to celebrate. And I think it's disgusting. And every time I think about it, it just makes me feel a bit sick to think. And I mean, I don't think that he's reveling in how those jewels were gotten, but I just think it's wrong, and we need to think things through a little bit more and go beyond the surface.
That leads me on to a question, Jane, because I mean, basically, and there was a thing on the news today about the monarchies of Europe are all beginning to slim down. They're all beginning to realise that that they're not as popular as they were. There isn't this automatic deference, particularly amongst young people, and the guy, the king from the Netherlands, the king and queen from the Netherlands, they're more like pop stars than they're going joining in the dancing and on stage leading the choral singing, the community singing. They looked great. Here's the thing: is there a hope of modernizing the monarchy so it's acceptable? Or is it just the case that really we need to get rid of the monarchy?
Oh, that's such a difficult question. When you look at the things since he has become king, Charles has donated money to food banks, to lots of charities who've spoken out publicly against government policy. And I think it makes quite a statement that he has done that. So he's obviously been very outspoken about climate change in the past as well, made his feelings clear on that. But I think with this country being the way it is, I don't think we can. I mean, look at the state of the ceremonies in Parliament, the ridiculous outfits, and rods, and the pomp and ridiculousness of it. It looks ridiculous, and I just can't see that changing in this country anytime soon, despite the fact that we've got a younger generation who sees straight through this, for the ridiculousness it is, whilst they're having to go into gig economy jobs, renting substandard damp accommodation, and living a standard of life that's just completely unacceptable amongst this glitz and obscene wealth on the upper echelons of society. But I can't see it changing anytime very soon.
I'm going to finish there with one chappie who said, "I've just finished putting up my decorations in my garden for the coronation," and he panned round, and there he built a guillotine. I just cracked out laughing.
Didn't you see that I shared that last night, John?
Was that you? Oh,
preparation for the coronation. It was like a guillotine with a bucket underneath it.
Oh, funny. I'm an out-and-out Republican. I empathise with Paul, with Charles. He's waited a long time for this, and he's finally got his hands on the crown. But I'm afraid there's no place for this vestige of the class system.
No, I don't.
Of inequality, and as Paul says, this idea that some people are born better than others. It's absolutely outrageous. I'm going to finish there. Oh my golly, Justicios, you're being brilliant today. Thank you very much.
John, you haven't shut up, that's why.
I'm
joking.
I get into trouble off Paul sometimes for talking too much, but I don't think I've talked at all very much today. I'm going to shut up now. Goodbye to the Justicios. You've been fantastic. Thank you. Thank you to my guests, Kerry, Jane, and Paul. And Paul, I'm going to hand over to you to finish off the show. Thank you very much indeed.
Many thanks to you, John, and I think it was me who spoke too much, if anything. So thank you so much, everyone who's listened at home and watched at home. Really appreciate it. Everyone who listens on the podcast as well. Do get involved. Go to socialisthinktank.com, find out what we're about there. Subscribe to everything that we do. We always say this, but it is very, very important. And tell your friends to do it. There's something I can't talk about, but at some point soon, I feel like we will find some hope. We haven't had any for a little while, and things are starting to feel like they're fizzling out on the left. But it's always darkest before the dawn. Something has to come, and the left in the UK is so politically downtrodden because of Keir Starmer and his clearly right-wing policies, and the people staying within the Labour Party who are on the left are really, really down, and people are all separated. Soon, things will change. Very soon. The answer is not within the Labour Party, but there are answers out there, and I think that very soon they'll be coming. So stick in there and stick together, look after each other.
Hang on with your fingertips.
And we will see you all very, very soon, and thank you so much for all that you do, because every time I say this, I am kind of preaching to the choir. You are really, really good people. So thanks for sticking with us, and take care, and we will see you all very soon.
God bless you. See you next week. Thank you.
Keep the red flag flying here.